Today's reading is from Luke, chapter 6, starting to read at verse 27. But I tell you who hear me, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who ill-treat you. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to him the other also. If someone takes your cloak, do not stop him from taking your tunic. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have done to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you'll be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you'll be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For the measure you use, it will be measured to you. This is the word of the Lord.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm on. So good morning. My name is Phil. And I'm part of the team here at St. Mellitus, and it's a privilege to be with you this morning and share some thoughts on this passage from Luke. But that's how I normally would have started. But this morning, as we've already discussed, it is a moment of transition for me. So my name is still Phil, or Philip. See, at 50, I still can't decide which one I want to be. And I'm just about still part of the team here, at least for the next few hours or so. So today is my last Sunday before I'm ordained in June and begin the next part of my training in St. John's Church in Southall. So in some ways, I am mid-step. I still feel very much part of this family. And I'm still at college, and I'm still writing assignments and dissertations. And yet at the same time, I'm distracted by the next step, on this rather strange journey that I find myself on towards ordination and priesthood. So in many ways, I feel a little bit like this guy.
Is it on?
This guy. John Cleese. And the Ministry of Silly Walks. So one foot planted here, and the other suspended mid-air, hesitating before it lands firmly in Southall in the summer. And it's an awkward place to be. That is not an awkward stance, is it? But I also wonder if there's a place that each of us can recognize. That sense of being on a journey. We're still learning. Never having quite arrived, have we? That feeling of being delicately balanced, one leg mid-air, mid-step, most of the time. And I think these words from Luke this morning speak right into that mid-step, never quite arrived feeling. So this morning, I'm going to try something new, and this will be music to my little wife's ears. I've got a 3-point sermon for you. See, I'm getting there. Our journeys shape us. Mercy shapes our journey. And then that mercy sets us free to fulfill that journey. So, I don't know what's led you here this morning to be part of this community. You may have been coming to St. Vitus for generations. I know some of you have. Well, this morning might be your first time, or it might be your last time. But I'd like to think that in some way, each of us have had a sense of calling to be here, even if we couldn't quite name it. And that calling always starts with a single step, a moment when something just stirs in us. And we said yes, even before we knew what we were fully saying yes to. So my own journey towards ordination started a long time ago, but it became concrete when about 3 years ago I grabbed Stu at the school drop-off. And I said those words that can instill a sense of mild panic in any vicar or priest. And he says, do you mind if I have a chat? There's something I just want to have a chat with you about. And Stu, being the ever-professional and discreet priest that he is, immediately gave me his concerned face that exudes care and safety, you know. That was my first step. And I genuinely had no idea that that initial chat would lead me to a year of discernment with Janet, and being welcomed here by you all, and then getting to know Jeremy and Margaret, and working with Lucy, and receiving their wisdom as well. And I can't express, genuinely, how much warmth and generosity that these last 2 years has meant to me. And for that, I'd just like to say thank you. And that's not to say that this journey, or that any of our journeys, is easy. You know, in many ways, it's been some of the hardest that I've walked in a long time. There have been weeks where I genuinely felt that there simply just weren't enough hours in the day to get stuff done. And then there are also moments of crisis on top of that. You know, I'm sure we've all had experience of those long, lonely, dark nights, you know, caused by all sorts of things. You know, the unexpected work news, or broken relationships, or unwanted diagnosis. You know, all those things that keep us up at night. The moment on the road when you genuinely don't know if you can go on. And it's at those times that I often think of the Israelites in Exodus. Despite God freeing them from slavery in Egypt, and all that promised, they still spent 40 years in the desert. You know, sometimes questioning God and wondering if they'd ever reach the promised land. And I think it's important to be honest, to admit that sometimes it's hard to have trust along with our faith. Because they're two slightly different things. And when trust is thin, we tend to cling on to what feels solid. Even when what feels solid is the hurt of delayed promises and unfulfilled dreams. And we hold on to that hurt and that guilt and that pain, and let those emotions have too much of a say in who we are. So what we end up doing is we end up pitching our tent in the wilderness when God is actually calling us forward. And it's only when we look back at the journey from a distance that we can see that God is still with us. He's still leading us and is still faithful. So our journeys shape us, even if we don't realize it at the time. Which brings me on to my next point, which is exactly where Jesus meets us in this passage. So when Jesus says, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you, do not judge, and be merciful. It might read like a set of instructions, but it's not. He's showing us a way through that desert. He's not telling us to try harder or be better, because all that does is enslave us to further feelings of self-doubt and shame. And I genuinely don't believe that's what Jesus wants for us. I think he says these words to set us free. Because Jesus never answers the problems of our broken world with a what. He only ever answers them with a who. And verse 36, he says, be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. If the answer isn't a technique or a 5-step plan, the answer is the Father, who has already shown mercy to each one of us. So we can't manufacture mercy out of our own resources. We can only look to Jesus, who, even as he spoke these words, already knows what is coming at Golgotha. Because Holy Week is where he will live these words out. Refusing to retaliate in Gethsemane. Blessing those who curse him. Forgiving those who beat him. Loving his enemies. And it's there at the cross that the reward he talks of in verse 35 becomes ours. I'm just going to read verse 35. Or half of it at least. It says, because when he says, then your reward will be great. Here it is, this is the reward. You will be sons of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. So the reward is relationship. It's not a transaction. We become children of the Most High. We're not judged as we deserve, but offered a mercy we can never earn. So this passage is taken from the Sermon on the Plain in Luke. And those hearing Jesus' words would have immediately thought of the law handed down to Moses on Mount Sinai. See, if you remember the point where the Israelites have lost their trust in God. They might still have faith, but they've lost their trust. And they're building the golden calf. But even at that point, Moses is already coming down the mountain. So grace and mercy are already coming down the mountain. Which got me thinking about this passage in the context of Exodus. See, before the law was even given, God's people were freed from slavery. See, the freedom came first. And then comes the call to live differently. See, it's liberation and then obligation. Before Jesus calls us to be merciful, God shows us mercy first. There's a beautiful word for mercy in Latin, which is called misericordia. And it comes from misere, which can be translated as suffering or pitying, and cor, meaning the heart. So together it becomes the pitying or compassionate heart. See, God's mercy is love meeting us in our misery. See, love where we need it most and deserve it the least. So that's the gift that we've been given. And it's the gift that we're called to give to others. And I think back at our time of various moments of being in this building. About 10 years ago, Emma and I used to come here from Messy Church with our children. They were a lot smaller back then, and they're being in youth now. And it's when we first came to really know Lucy and Stu and spend some time here. And I think there's always been something of this sharing of God's love present in this place. Whether it's Messy Church back in the day, or Tinies and Tots, or the winter night shelter. You know, I even used to volunteer at the food bank a long time ago when the food would all fit in one tiny shed off the back of the church hall. And now look at it. See, part of the DNA of this church and this community has always been misericordia. A compassionate heart, meeting people in moments of misery. This is a community that chooses again and again to be merciful to one another, to make room, to welcome the stranger with the same warmth as a family member. And I've been on the receiving end of it. And of course, it's a ministry shaped by Stu and Lucy, and Janet, and Jeremy and Margaret. But it's also shaped by you as much as by them. And it has been an example to me as I've been with you more closely over the last couple of years, and will shape how I see ministry going on from here. So that is what I've seen here. A church where the gospel is not just spoken, but practiced. And I know it's not a perfect community, and you may not always feel it from the inside. Yeah, most of us never do. But I do want to say to you, if you'll indulge me, from someone who is about to step away and look back, that it is real, and it is rare, and it's precious. Which brings me to my third point. Because mercy isn't only what we receive when we arrive in the wilderness. It's what follows, which is what allows us to keep walking when the time comes to move on. And it sets us free. In verse 37, when Jesus says, "Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you." These words set us free from the weight of bitterness and disillusionment. See, if we hold on to that weight for too long, they become too heavy to carry. And they begin to shape our thoughts and how we see each other. So these words in verse 37 can feel like some of the hardest to live by. You know, and so much of our culture is telling us to judge others. You know, whether that's something facile like Britain's Got Talent, or condemning whoever is the next Prime Minister, or simply having a good gossip about someone else. Living in a way that goes against that is genuinely hard. And we can't do it by ourselves. We can only do it through the mercy that we've already been shown by God. And this feels especially real to me as I'm about to move on from one season to another. And when any of us makes that kind of move, you know, a new job, a new home, there's always stuff that we carry with us. So what will I carry with me from here? Well, I look around this room, and I see people that I've laughed with, and I've prayed with, and I've eaten with, and I've learned from. You know, people who have welcomed me when I was tired, prayed for me when I was struggling, who have forgiven me for saying the wrong name of this church at the front. After a while. And as I prepare to move on, I generally do that with enormous gratitude. As you have not just been a place where I've trained, you've been a place where I have been formed. And I will miss you more than I can easily say. But what I carry with me from this place, from St. Mellitus, from you all, is misericordia. So, back to where we started. And that hesitant mid-air step. Because the journey doesn't just stop when one of us moves on. The truth of it is that every one of us is mid-step this morning. I don't think any of us can say that we've arrived, can we? None of us is standing still. You know, my foot will land in Southall in the summer, and yours will land wherever the next stretch of road takes you. But Jesus doesn't ask us to have both feet on the ground before we can be loved by him. He meets us mid-step, mid-stumble. And he meets us in our joy and in our misery. And the call is the same for all of us, to receive the mercy that has already been poured out, and to let that mercy shape the way we travel, and the way we travel together. So if I can leave you with anything, it will be this. Jesus never answers problems with a what. He only answers them with a who. Our Father in heaven, his Son is at his right hand, and the Holy Spirit with us now, already showing us mercy, already walking that